Bleav in Vikings, the week 14 edition. The Vikings beat the New York Jets 27-22. And it seems like every football game for the Vikings is right in that range 27-22, 28-20. And it's always about a 5 or 6, 7.8 game, and the Vikings win. They're 9-0 one score games. So, Bryant, I've been thinking about this all week. I already know your answer, but I have to ask anyway. If you're on a football team that's up 20-3, and you just kind of go to bed and you lose it, and then you salvage it with a win in the fourth quarter, are you at all thinking we got to put these sons of bitches away before it gets to this point? Or are you doing the mantra, a win is a win?
At a certain point, though, somebody, if it's not me, somebody on the team, I just know, like, even as Hurricanes, it reads, somebody would have spoke up and said, okay, we don't have to make it close. Like, every game doesn't have to be close. So I would say maybe this is like to excite the fans a little bit. But I would say at a certain point, like, we have to learn how to finish then, because if that's the case, if it's getting, 20-3, and then people are making it a closer game again, it's like we're getting lax somewhere, we're getting comfortable at a certain point, and we have to just realize we needed to continue to step on the gas.
Sally,
but then they are still finding a way to win, though. But you just there's a period of time where you're kind of being lulled to sleep a little bit too.
Sally, I think what was 20 was 20-3, and then their version of Greg the Leg hit a 60-yarder, which of course it was going to be good. It kind of felt like, all right, what are they doing? And then the 3-and-out on the first drive, it was absolutely preordained that game was going to go down to the wire. What do you think after these collapse leads but salvage victories? Are you like, well, son of a bitch, we still won, or are you shaking your head?
Well, isn't it funny? I feel like we're having the same conversation every single week almost. But I mean, I was sitting there up 20-3 and I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is the week they finally change the narrative. And obviously that didn't happen. And yeah, I mean, just like you said, it to hold them, to just those 3 field goals to start out and then to just have the collapse. It's disappointing. You would like to see them step up and just put a team away eventually. Somehow at the end of these games, they're always pulling it out. They certainly didn't make it easy on themselves after getting a turnover in the red zone and then not being able to convert a first down, going 3-and-out. But I mean, like Bryant just said, and like we've all said, I mean, they're finding ways to win. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
Ron,
I would like to say that I think that I am partially to blame for this, because remember week 1 of the Packers game, I sat there and I was like, this is cool and all, but I'd like a little more action. This is a little boring. So I got what I wished for. An entertaining season nonetheless.
You got to figure out a way to reverse that, and we'll take the next 5 games as like 17-point wins.
Sure,
Ron,
yeah, it'd be great.
It's the most mind-boggling thing in the Minnesota community that the Vikings would be 10-2, and we're like, oh, it's just kind of like you did what against the Jets? I think the problem with the Jets is that we have the stereotype that it's the Jets, when in reality they were a 7-4 football team that's now 7-5. So when there's nothing that bothers me more in sports when my favorite team starts to, especially the Vikings, start to choke away a lead. I'd rather just lose like they lost the Cowboys and be done with it. When they start to walk back a lead, I become an absolute 4-year-old. Are you different? How does this win sit with you against the Jets, Ron?
Well, there's a couple things, because yes, the first 3-and-out, the fact that we weren't able to move the ball, that was a little depressing with that big momentum shift. But one thing I will say, because yes, it is the Jets, or like that's what we all want to think. But man, that defense is legit. They got players across the field. They got a lot of depth, and they're good at key spots. So the fact that we got to 20 points in the first half on them, like that was impressive. Like, because they don't give up that many points. Now we'll get to the defensive side of the ball in a different way, because we're making Mac Jones, Mike White look like Joe Namath and Tom Brady over here. But kudos to the defense for stepping up when it matters, making those plays. And if it weren't for Shannon Sullivan not knowing how to tackle, like on the Garrett Wilson long pass, he gave up. I don't know what he was doing, but it was very much a missed tackle game, and that so far this season has been a little unorthodox. So I think some of that you can clean up. But the whole time, as the Jets are, kicking all their field goals, and you're watching Greg Zuerlein look like the Greg Zuerlein that kicked the Rams in the Super Bowl. But he the whole time I'm telling Cindy, I'm like, there's no way that, or like, I was like, they still have to score a touchdown because we were up by two scores. Like, they still have to score a touchdown. And then the other side was they still got to do it twice. And I don't trust the Jets offense to do that the way that they've played. Now, again, it got a lot closer than I would have wanted. But, it's, again, I think we all know that these close games are, they're going to learn from it, but at some point I'd like to see them learn from it and then counterpunch like in the game. And that third quarter, that was, I don't know there's no way to explain what happened in that third quarter. And that's frustrating because third quarter woes, now that's a trend. It's no longer a mirage with this team.
Yeah, on both sides of the ball, they both just, completely just take a nap in the third quarter. There's been a couple games where they've changed the script a little bit, but this one was probably the worst because 10 plays, 10 yards, whatever it was on offense. And the defense didn't surrender points, but it was just doing its bend but don't break items. Let's talk about playoff seeding for a second, Ron. The Vikings still have a somewhat realistic chance of getting the 1 seed, but they need the Eagles to lose 2 games, and they don't have the easiest schedule. They got the Cowboys and the Giants, if you consider them a threat. You were talking to me offline this week about the number 2 seed theory. What do you got in that regard?
So while yes, it'd be great to have the 1 seed, have home field advantage throughout and everything. But if you take a step back and look at it, the way obviously with Garoppolo no longer, and imagine where we've come. We're talking about Garoppolo being gone from the Niners as a significant loss. But when you have a rookie, last pick in the draft, like that's going to happen. Now they have a lot of talent on that team, but still, it's Brock Purdy, not Jimmy G.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it is it might not be the worst thing in the world if we have the number 2 seed and we're able to lock that up because the 1 and 5 seeds are going to be the NFC East teams, Cowboys, Eagles, however you want to slice it. So, and assuming the Cowboys then win their first round of the playoffs, which is all but likely, or the Eagles, whoever that may be, they then, and then assuming that the 3 seed takes care of business, the Vikings would then, yes, they have to beat the 7 seed, which again, whether that's the Seahawks or whatever, either way, you just handle business at home. And then the next game, instead of you avoid both, or you'll have to at some point play one of them, but you don't have to play both of them. And whereas if you have the 1 seed, you're going to have to play both of them at some point to get to the Super Bowl. So my thoughts are, if you sit comfortably in this 2 seed and you hope that they just kind of beat each other up, whoever that may be, you hope for the away team to win, whether that's Cowboys or Eagles, and then have them come here. But so yes, it's an extra game. You don't get the bye, but the path may be slightly easier, team wise. Now again, I'm not going to put it's the NFL. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So yes, get the bye. Home field, be fine with that. But it may not be the worst thing in the world if we stay in that 2nd seed going into the playoffs.
I think your theory would be that the Cowboys would beat the Bucks in Tampa. That's kind of that's the one gimme that you have. It's probably not a gimme with Brady on that team. But in that scenario, yeah, the Eagles would play the Cowboys. And then if you think the Cowboys have the gumption to knock them off, the NFC Championship could end up in Minneapolis. Sally, if the Vikings ran into the Cowboys in the playoffs, which is very likely, would you be like, all right, this is a revenge situation, or would you be like, oh God, them again?
I mean, it's funny that after like 2 years on this show, you haven't figured out that I'm like a 1 week at a time kind of gal. I don't like looking ahead to this stuff because it's probably not going to happen that way anyways. No, I don't want the Vikings to play them. I don't want them to play the Eagles, but it's going to happen eventually. I guess if I had to choose, I would rather them play Dallas. But I mean, I think it's going to be tough either way. But I would lean Dallas just because it would be back at US Bank Stadium, even though Dallas doesn't seem to have a problem with that historically. So I don't know. Either way, it's not great. It actually slipped my mind until earlier this week that now only 1 team gets a bye. So that sucks. I don't really think the Eagles need another week of rest, but yeah, I don't know. It's not something I spend a lot of energy pondering, to be
Do,
honest.
do you look at the shape, the way the 7th seed's shaping up, or no cares?
Well, I mean, it's just so you don't know. I mean, technically Detroit could still get it.
Mhm.
So
So could the Packers.
I
Mhm.
don't, right. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting, I guess, to think about a little bit, but and as we've said, the NFC is just not as competitive as the AFC. So I'm not too worried about those lower seeds. But you know,
Packers fans and pundits are doing what we usually do at this time of year, crunching scenarios on who needs to lose and who needs to win for them to get in, because they have to run the table, which is 4 more games, and then have a bunch of shit happen between Commanders and Giants and who have you. Bryant, do players start peeking at playoff situations, or is that a fan and media driven thing?
No, players do. They try to get an idea if when I played, it was 2 bye weeks.
Yeah.
First side, but you'll want to get a bye week, but then if not, you try to figure out who you have to play and try to figure out if it's going to be home or away, things like that. So you do try to take a peek at it.
Okay.
And get an idea, get a feel for if it's a team you played against already, or if not. I do think if they play Dallas again and they having Darisaw back, it may make a difference, and I think it would be a different outcome because now it's like this is either you win or go home. It's not. There isn't at this point a yeah, we only have one loss, and okay, we kind of can afford it when you can't afford to win, and you just look at it how well you had, like how well your season has been. So now it's the team that you kind of do get some type of redemption on where it really counts, and you can knock them out. I'm pretty sure that it'll be a more of a tense game, especially at home. Like you get to play them again at home in the same season, yeah.
Yeah, and if they do meet the Cowboys again, in all likelihood, unless the Eagles have a junior collapse, the Cowboys would have to come to US Bank Stadium because
Right.
of the way the playoffs are structured. On the other hand, though, if they want to get redemption against the Eagles, in all likelihood, that'll have to be in Ron's least favorite spot in the world, the city of Philadelphia. At least,
yeah,
Second least to just all of Wisconsin.
I don't know how we're even supposed to sit through that. So that's why I don't want to think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just enjoy the moment. I get it.
Bryant, the Vikings injury report, the first one of the week was released, and it's their largest of the season because 5 players did not practice because of, quote, illness, end quote. And I think ESPN's reporter Kevin Seifert said it was not the coronavirus, it's just illness. So does that sound like a flu thing to you, or?
It sounds like a flu or something that they can be over within like 3 days.
Okay.
And we
Yep.
don't know when they first got it, but they probably sat them out, today. They'll probably practice tomorrow, Friday.
Let's see, who else was on there? It seems that Christian Darisaw is perhaps trending to come back. He's a maybe this week, and they have said they've been more optimistic about Cameron Dantzler starting, and that's as Caleb Evans hits the IR for a concussion. I don't know that I've ever heard about the injured reserve for concussion, so that gives me concerns because he's had 2. I think Chris Thomason from the Pioneer Press said that he's had 3 now. I don't remember the third one, but definitely 2. So this injury report, in about 2 minutes, we're going to talk about the point spread, this weird point spread that we have. But foremost, this injury report, Ron, does that make you a little nervous, or do you think this thing cleans up by Friday or so?
I mean, it does, especially when you're dealing with illnesses and players in close proximity. Just you know, what it takes out of you. It's you can't practice. You likely can't eat, all that type of stuff. So now your conditioning, everything now it's taken into effect, and they're all around each other. So hope it doesn't. I mean, thank God it's not COVID, and dealing with those protocols and whatnot. But it's always concerning. But then again, it's also we live in Minnesota. Like everyone is sick at this point or close to it. It's there going around. So hopefully it's just something small where it's like, you know what, no need to push your lungs today. Just whatever, get your rest. So the actual injured players that are starting to progress, with Darisaw, well, primarily Darisaw. I mean, it sounds like he's trending towards playing, which obviously that's huge. Having a couple weeks off, and I think Brandel stepped in and played as well as you could have expected for a player in that situation when you're losing one of the best left tackles in the league. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, the whatever bug they're dealing with just doesn't get any worse and doesn't affect the team from here on out. But I anticipate that whether or not they're ill, they're going to play. I can't imagine too many players that don't take that sense of pride in, even if I'm sick. I remember Robert Smith, that game against Tampa, whatever, late 90s, throwing up on the field and then, having a big game. So hopefully they're all just better and everyone that's hurt, it's not on IR is ready to play on Sunday.
One thing that I learned during the pandemic, which probably embarrassing I didn't already know, is that you talked about Minnesota climate being cold, is folks don't get sick because it's cold outside. It's because people stay indoors more and the ventilation recycles the viruses. And I think for that point, 37 years, I was kind of like, oh, you go outside, it's cold climate, you get cold, but it's not your body lowering its defenses. It's that you stay indoors more and pick up more shit through the air. And COVID,
I didn't know.
Yeah, COVID taught me that. Yeah, the whole thing about going outside without a hat or wet hair, all of that is false. The viruses don't care if your body's cold. It's just more people stay inside, and therefore more germs and viruses go through ventilation. But this is not Bleav in diseases. This is Bleav in Vikings. So I'm going to ask you, Sally, about the point spread. It started.
Well, wait. First of all, Evans, I mean, you talked about him going to IR for the concussions. I don't know if you saw this, but he had a complete Twitter meltdown.
No.
After the game. This is what he tweeted. Now, of course, I just lost it. He said at 8:04 p.m., "Don't hit me up because I'm not answering." And then, of course, a bunch of people proceeded to hit him up. And he said, it means don't hit me up. Okay. So I don't know. And then, I just thought that was interesting because he was obviously very upset. It sounded like a little more than maybe the concussion or maybe not. I don't know. Just speculating. But sorry, go ahead. You're going to talk about the spread.
Yeah, but foremost, that was tonight or that was Sunday night?
That was Sunday night.
Okay.
At 8. So not too long after the game.
I wonder, it's totally speculation. I wonder if he learned that he was going to be on the shelf now because he had back-to-back concussions and he was like, screw all that. I'm fine.
That's my
hypothesis. He did tweet something too that said
sad.
He did, like, one of the other things that I saw that was deleted was, well, I guess I'm not playing. But so I don't know what that was in reference to, but
he obviously doesn't agree with the IR.
Shocking.
Yeah, and he's usually Captain Positivity, so that's strange. The point spread, Sally, I want to ask you about it. When it first kind of debuted Sunday night, Monday morning, it was even, and then it was a point for the Lions, and now the thing's 2.5 for the 5-7 Lions hosting the 10-2 Vikings. So it's very apparent that at least by a point or half a point, the Vegas believes the Lions are better than the Vikings, and I struggle to wrap my head around it. Do they know about this injury report or what?
Well, I am sure you saw that the Lions also have players with illness as well. So
yes, I did,
but not starters. They only have 3, and the Vikings have 4 starters. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, for being the home team, they're going to get more of an advantage. But it is shocking. I guess that Vegas believes that the Lions, they're 4 out of the last 5 games that they've won, that they're for real, and the Vikings are going to get exposed is, I guess, what it looks like. But they play close games pretty much historically. I mean, especially the last 3 years since 2 years since Dan Campbell's been there. The last 3 games, I mean, I think the biggest difference in points has been 4. So I mean, I don't know what to think about it, but it is weird.
It is, and I throughout the week look at various things, and like DVOA or EPA per play, almost every team metric shows the Vikings average at about between 15th and 19th. And for somehow they have this voodoo that the only thing that they do really, really, really well is win games in the fourth quarter. I have no idea why that is the case, and I don't dislike it. But I'll maintain I was sitting there towards the end of the Cowboys game 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, and I swear that was the game that Vegas, the national media wanted to see to feel vindicated about just not. I mean, if you turn on any ESPN radio show tomorrow and they're talking about Super Bowl contenders, they don't mention the Vikings. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bills still, who are the front runners somehow, Eagles and Cowboys. And at a 10-2, you're like, God. Then you start to wonder, like, do they know something I don't? Are they're I don't know. So the point spread is certainly in favor of the Lions. Does that matter to you at all, Bryant, that the Lions are favored, or is that just chalkboard material?
I feel like were they favored the last time we played them or not?
No. And the weird part is that back in the day, you always add 3 points on top of the home team. And I think in recent years, it's usually a point or two in favor of the home team. So it's almost as if odds makers, Vegas, is saying, the Lions are a better football team by about a point, no matter where they play. And I don't know if it's momentum because they just smoked the Jaguars. But yeah, I don't know if it can be channeled for good because the 10-2 Vikings are underdogs against the Detroit Lions.
Right. So that should be a conversation in the locker room saying, even though we're sitting here at 10-2, we're still underdog. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
hell yeah.
Because like, why? We still haven't proven ourselves because we're still being doubted by a lot of people. We're sitting at 10-2 with the second best record. What is the second best record?
Yeah, like not even tied for it. Straight up, the second best record
right in the league, but we're like not even in consideration for anything. And then now we're underdogs against Detroit. Like, I don't know what's going on, honestly.
Yeah, it's strange. One good thing, Ron or Sally, is it's kind of impossible to have a trap game when you're just underdogs against teams that are 5-7. So
true, that's true.
Yeah, you can't get too full of yourself. Let's see. I think the one final thing I want to talk about is this afternoon, Jalen Reagor, who is the Vikings WR4 and punt returner, joined the team from the Eagles late in the summer. He guaranteed a victory. He told Chris Thomason, "We're going to win." And Thomason said, "Do you guarantee it?" And he said, yes. So Ron, I don't know why he's in the business of making that prognostication. He's not the quarterback, but do you think that's chalkboard material, or is that just some hubris that's welcomed?
I don't know if it's chalkboard material. I mean, if Jefferson came out, hey Stone, if Jefferson came out and said it, or one of the guys who, and I'm not saying Reagor hasn't had an impact because obviously punt returning and then he's made some plays. But when it comes from your fourth wide receiver saying something, I don't think that's going to give the Lions the extra motivation. Like, oh, now we're going to go and we're going to beat their ass. Like, but I mean, it doesn't. One, the way the Lions have been playing lately too. If they need that as motivation, then that's another story as well. So, I mean, I think it's one of those, and we all know how Sally knows better than all of us how Thomason likes to ask his questions, and he's very good at just no filter, doesn't care, and just looking for a response. And so be it. It came from the punt returner, but maybe he goes out and has a monster play or monster special teams play and backs it up. I'm sure he would like to have that opportunity to be out there to back it up, and I think he's shown that he has that ability in spurts. I don't know if there's the consistent nature of it, but it's really a non-story for me.
Bryant, a teammate of yours, a punt returner no less, guaranteeing victory. How does that sit with you? If that happens.
He was my teammate?
No, no, I knew as soon as I said it. If he was your teammate.
You saying in general? You better go ahead and return a few punts then. Put it out there and make it easier on us a little bit.
Right? Put your money where your mouth is. I mean, I don't mind it. What else is he supposed to say?
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how he would have answered that question, it would have been wrong to someone, right? I mean, like Ron said, it is Chris Thomason. Love him to death, but Chris Thomason would have spun that quote. Not that it wouldn't be accurate because it would be what he said, but the story that would have accompanied that wouldn't have been great, or the tone of the tweets, right? So like there wasn't really a way to win that scenario, and I'd rather him say that than then not have the confidence that they were going to win.
Mhm.
So
Right. It would be more of a story if he came out and like, if a player came out and said the opposite, like,
Yeah,
we're
Vikings
gonna get
wide
our
receiver.
asses kicked.
Yeah, Vikings wide receiver doesn't think they can beat the Lions.
right.
Unless
Yeah.
it's in like a
Exactly.
sarcastic way, like when some of those guys play to the media, like, well, we've already lost this game, right? Like, but
What about Hawkinson playing his old team, Sally? Does that little motivation there?
Well, it's funny how since they've made that trade is when they've really turned the season around.
Yeah.
I mean, they were 1-6 to start the year. They parted ways with Hawkinson, and now they've won 4 out of 5. It's kind of crazy how that happened, but I'm sure TJ wants to have a good game against them, of course, and I know KOC definitely understands that, and so maybe he's going to incorporate him, more than he would have
And he's
against.
familiar. I always remember when guys came from teams and we played, and the coaches would always ask them a lot of questions because they were familiar with the guys on on the team. So he probably can give some insight on the style of play or how people are. So that's kind of how he's a little more valuable too this week.
Right. And then on the flip side, obviously Detroit knows him very well. So it'll be interesting to
Right.
see how that plays out. But I do think it's pretty crazy how they've kind of changed the tone of their season since then.
And it was like to the day, Sally, because the
Right.
trade deadline was on November 1st. And since then, they've been the third best team in football per wins and losses.
Right. And Jared Goff has been amazing. So it's like, I don't think that it has anything to do with TJ by any means as to why that has changed. But it is crazy that, I mean, Goff hasn't even thrown a pick in like 4 weeks, right? Which is not characteristic for him. So.
Yeah, it's kind of like not exactly an equivalent, but after the Bears traded away Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith, they were like, oh, okay, well, let's start using Justin Fields as a scrambling quarterback. Not that those have any correlation, but their offense got all sexy, and Justin Fields now looks like he's going to be a good quarterback. And it was like, well, you just traded away your defense, so now he's going to have to do even more. So figure that one out. All right, on predictions, you guys probably won't like this. I'm picking the Lions to win by 30-27, just because I do believe Minnesota will win the next 2 games at home. And I feel like these hot Lions are due to win, so I'm taking them 30-27. Ron, what do you got?
Well, I would say that if my gut feeling is if the Vikings were favored and this were the normal, they're a 10-2 team going on the road against a division rival, expected to win, I could see them losing that type of game. I think the fact that they are the underdogs, I think that's that added motivation. Like the fact that they're a 10-2 team, second best record in the league, and they're getting disrespected. I think now is the time where, again, it's a familiar opponent. The games are always going to be close. I think the advantage of having Hawkinson being in that locker room and, knowing that offense, I think that's going to be helpful. He knows what Jared Goff likes to do, how they like to play. So I think that gives the added advantage, in my mind, of us. The Lions are playing really well. I'm not going to take that away from them, but I think us coming off of the games that we've been playing, and again against the tough, we come off playing 4 really good defenses between the Bills, Cowboys, Patriots, and Jets, and now not shitting on the Lions, but we're going to play the Lions defense. They're also saying the same thing. They're playing our defense, but I like our offense better than theirs. So I have us winning. I think we're going to put up points. I think it's going to be about a 34-27 game.
Okay. Sally, after the Hawkinson trade, I should clarify, the Lions became a damn good football team. They're not just good for the Lions. They are in almost every defense metrics too. They've been solid. So I've tried to look at this week all week as not just, they're good for the little Lions. They're good right now. What do you got for prediction?
Yeah, I agree with you. They are really good right now. And I believe that their blitz package has been very successful recently. So, I mean, you really need Darisaw back to help out with that. I don't know. I mean, I never count the Lions out any season against the Vikings. It just feels really weird to pick against them at this point, which is crazy. I don't think I've maybe picked against them since week 2. So it's crazy how that doesn't feel natural to me anymore. But I think logically, if I have to put down the Kool-Aid, it is pretty likely that this is one that just doesn't go their way, because I do think, even though, the Vikings won the last 2 weeks and they've been good games, I just feel like the Lions have a lot of momentum right now. Jared Goff said this is the best he's ever played in his career. This is the most confidence and the most comfortable he's ever been. And I think that's kind of showing in the way that he's been playing. And you already mentioned the defense. So I guess it's going to be another close one. Let's see. To mix it up, I guess I'll go. I'm not going to diss Greg Joseph right now. He had a good week. So maybe I'll go 27-24 Lions.
That's what I was going to go.
Oh, well, it's got to be right then.
Are you taking B-Mac? Finish?
I was going to say the Vikings, if Darisaw plays and if they really use the fact that they are underdogs and that, like, it's certain things that have to be said to them and brought to their attention about being underdogs and to the Detroit Lions and being 10-2 and not having respect, still not being respected, things like that. And then Darisaw coming in and playing too. And then I can feel like I can say the Vikings can win. I don't know if those things are being said in the locker room or not, but they should be, to make them feel like you still haven't earned the respect yet. So don't get comfortable. So with if that's the mindset, then I can see them pulling this out. But I do think it would be a 27-24 game with those factors.
Who do you got winning?
It is. Oh,
you got the Lions.
If those things are taking place, mainly like letting the team know that they don't. I would say the Vikings. If the team knows like that, you guys have been fought all year long and they still don't respect you, it'll put a little chip on their shoulders. And it's like, and then they have you losing, Detroit. I understand Detroit's having a good season, and and then Darisaw comes back too, will make an impact as well.
Look, the Vikings are Dan Campbell's first ever win as a coach, so it's probably
correct.
special to him.
Yeah, and go ahead, Ron.
Oh, I was gonna say, I will say, I think if Darisaw's healthy in this game, I think Kirk has his best game of the season. I think 300 yards, 3 TDs, because I think it will be a shootout. There's balls are going to be moving,
which is crazy to say.
Yeah, it is.
It's Jared Goff.
Goff. Let's see, drafted 2016 as 2022. If indeed he is pretty decent quarterback, this would really be the time of his career that he'd be at his peak if he didn't, get traded from the Rams. Like, based on a dude's resume, this is about the time you get to your peak.
Well, it could have shades of that Thursday night football game in LA when him and Kirk went back and forth and just in like a 38-37 or whatever game that was. But who knows? Watch, this will be a game too that Jameson Williams busts off because of course we traded him or gave them the opportunity to draft him. So watch him hit a long one on us or something.
I know we're wrapping up, but I wanted to ask you about this, Dustin, because their first matchup in week 3, JJ was held to 14 yards. So, obviously, I don't think it's going to be that bad, but are you concerned about that at all with their secondary?
Yeah, I am. I'm concerned about it because they're just going to replicate what they did because it works so damn well. And the only reason the Lions lost that game is because they went for it on 4th down over and over and over. So somebody's got to pull that.
Except when it mattered.
Yeah, pull that more on aside and said, yeah, it's good to do that, but not every time. And I swear to God, sitting at that game, it was like 4th and something between the 40 and the 50. And they're like, oh, fucking A, let's go for it. And like every time. And so you can't do that every single time. And the whole reason the Vikings won that game was because Campbell was moronic with his 4th down decision making.
Reckless, yeah.
However, unlike before in the past 2 seasons, anyhow, I trust this coaching staff to figure out what tamed Jefferson last time and circumvent it, just like they did after the Cowboys game when they could get nothing going and you had the Patriots coming to town and boom, you beat them. So yeah, I think it'll be a game for Jefferson that's probably 70, 80, 90 yards rather than a goose egg or 200.
The other part of that first matchup, and again, we keep going to the Hawkinson. Well, we didn't have Hawkinson. So Hawkinson has shown in his time here that how that opens up the rest of the field for JJ. So I think having that in the middle of the field, and I can see the Lions players in their own right wanting to take Hawkinson out of the game just because that pride factor. Like you don't want to get beat by a guy who was on your team and that they traded away. So, but I just think that's going to open it up for Jefferson on the outside. And I know, Okuda and, is it Oruwariye? I think they've been playing well, but they got their defensive coordinator or their D-backs coach Can. So, so we'll see that. Like, it'll be a good test, but having the matchup already in the holster for both sides, I think they both will learn from that and come out a little differently.
Yep.
Well, Ron, it is #1pride, so that was a good adjective.
There we go.
The Lions are about
the roar has been restored, right?
Let's hope not this week.
No, right.
But yeah.
Detroit is about 45 seconds away on Thanksgiving and a Josh Allen away from being 5-0 since the Hawkinson trade. So yeah, we're not trying to be doom and gloom about the perspective of this game, but the Vikings are going up against suddenly a good football team on the road against the division rival. So all right, we'll recap this one next week.
Sorry.
Yep.
I was just going to say the fact that the Vikings have the opportunity to win the division, like just by a win, not having to rely on, I think that's another added piece of motivation. The fact that we can go and we can take this crown from the team that's trying to get it from us.
That's a good point.
We'll recap this one next week, and then we'll preview the Colts matchup on a Saturday. And the Vikings usually find a way to play their worst game of the season against the Colts. That's how it's been for the last 2 times, and they haven't beat the Colts since 1997. However, it's a brand new year, and we will talk about that next week. Anything else from the group?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Have a good evening.
All right, bye, guys.
Go, baby.